I seemed to return from a deep, dark hole and found myself in a room that I had seen somewhere before. But in my dazed state, I could not remember where or when. The tube was stuck in my nose, which was uncomfortable, and the noise of voices brought my mind into greater awareness. I recognized the voice of my wife demanding something from someone in a white coat. "How is he? What happened to him?" she asked. I felt a moment of hostility toward her, but I couldn't remember why I was angry with her. The figure in the white coat replied, "At the moment, we are not sure what his problem is. We will run a series of tests in the morning to see if there is damage to his heart, but we will keep him in the intensive care unit overnight and monitor his condition. For now, we're preparing to sedate him so he can rest comfortably tonight. We'll continue to give him oxygen." I felt a prick in my arm, which somehow seemed constrained, and after what seemed like a few minutes, I slid back into my comfortable dark pit. When I woke up again, it was morning, and the nurse was adjusting the Roman 4 hooked up to my arm. I looked around the room, and the devices connected to my body told me that I was in intensive care. My wife was curled up in the chair by the window, sleeping, and again I felt slightly irritated, but I couldn't remember why I was angry with her. The nurse suddenly noticed that I was awake and spoke. "Good morning, Mr. Carter. How are you feeling this morning?" "Dizzying," I managed to say with difficulty. My throat was dry. "Well, drink this and you will feel better," she said, bringing the straw to my lips, and I took a sip of water. The noise of our conversation must have woken my wife. "Jack, are you okay? Honey, I'm so sorry about what happened." "What's happened?" I wondered in my fuzzy mental state. I tried to remember anything from my memory that could explain what happened and why I was here. Suddenly, I remembered the previous evening and what caused me to rage, which I could not control. It was like turning on a light bulb in a darkened room. "You bitch," I suddenly shouted at my wife. "Get out of my sight." My wife looked at me with horror on her face. Alarms were ringing all around me, and a panicked nurse tried to calm me down. "Mr. Carter, please calm down." "Mrs. Carter, you will have to leave immediately," the nurse said to my wife as she adjusted the valve on the Roman 4, and within seconds I slid back into my comfortable dark hole. The last thing I remember was my wife crying and leaving the intensive care unit. When I woke up again, it must have been about noon because the room was filled with sunlight, and I heard the voice of my eldest son, David. "When will we be able to find out how he is physically? The family is very concerned about his mental state as well." "He should wake up soon," the doctor replied. "And once he does, we'll begin running tests to determine the status of his heart and other vital signs. We should get an idea of his physical condition later this afternoon. Regarding his mental state, I would suggest that you or a family member other than Mrs. Carter sit down and talk to him. From what I have been told, he is reacting strongly to your mother, so we are asking her to stay away until the problems in their marriage are resolved. A psychiatrist or marriage counselor may be needed to resolve the marital problems that seem to be bothering your father, but first we must determine his physical condition." "Okay, doctor. Thank you very much. I will speak on behalf of the family in my mother's place." "I understand," the doctor said, turning to my bed. "Oh, great, Mr. Carter. I see you're awake. We'll start testing right away. Dad, how are you feeling? Can I get you something?" "Yes, you can keep your mother away from me and tell John Masters that I want to see him as soon as possible." "John Masters, your lawyer? Okay, Dad, if that's what you want, I'll try to arrange a meeting with him tomorrow. But you need to explain this to us. Mom is almost on the verge of a nervous breakdown." "I know, son, and I'll try to talk to you. More on that later." How did it all start? Why am I so angry with my wife of 25 years? I need to go back 12 years to when I found out my wife was cheating on me. It almost destroyed me that the person I loved most in the world betrayed me and our children. At the time, I thought we were happily married with 3 wonderful children. David was 12, Sandra was 10, and Michael was 7. I had a good job, and my very beautiful wife, Ginger, who was 35, worked part-time as a bank teller. Before I found out about her infidelity, I felt like something was wrong in our marriage, and then I noticed strange clues that made me suspicious. Our sex life dwindled to almost nothing, and then, as I searched her purse for our checkbook, I discovered a hotel receipt for last Tuesday while I was on a business trip. Continuing to search through her purse, I found a pack of condoms, 2 missing, hidden in a secret compartment that I found by feeling the lining of the bag. This prompted me to look into our household finances while she was at work one Saturday morning. She usually handled finances and paying bills, so I had no reason to look at our records. I discovered that one of our credit cards had been charged twice in the past month for the same airport hotel. The dates coincided with the time when I was on a business trip. If she was seeing a lover, I wondered why the hell she was paying for the room. Was her lover another woman? I also found her cell phone bills and found a number that was called regularly that I didn't recognize. Now it was more than a suspicion, and I felt my chest begin to tighten and a nauseous feeling developed. So I went into the bathroom and sat on the toilet to see if the feeling would go away. While I waited, I thought, is she really cheating on me? Why is she doing this? Am I not giving her enough of my love? I thought our sex life was good. I tormented myself with the unknown. I had to find out the truth. After a while, the feeling of nausea and stress went away, and I decided that in the future I would have to be more careful, otherwise I might have a heart attack. I made an appointment with our lawyer, John Masters, for next Tuesday. I didn't say anything to Ginger, but I tried to act normal. However, when she suggested having sex, I couldn't respond and blamed it on the pressure of a new project at work. She seemed to accept it and was content to just cuddle up to me. On Tuesday, I took the day off from work and went to John. He was surprised to learn that Ginger might be involved in an affair, but he recommended that to be sure and have enough evidence of the affair, I should hire a licensed private investigator to gather the necessary information and photographs to support my allegations. He also advised me of my limited rights regarding child custody and recommended that it would be cheaper and better for the children if I confronted her and forced her to end the relationship in order to save the marriage and family. I agreed to take into account everything he told me, but still decided to have a private investigator document the affair. He thought it would probably be wise to do this and gave me the address and telephone number of a private detective he could vouch for. As soon as I got back to my office, I called and made an appointment with the detective, Sam Davis, for the next day. Sam turned out to be a sharp-witted man, and when I told him about the evidence I had found, he pointed out that I might have reason to be suspicious. Considering that the alleged dates with my lover took place on the days when I was on a business trip, he asked when my next trip was planned. I told him I had a meeting in Denver the following Tuesday and would leave Monday morning and return Wednesday. Given that the previous proposed dates only involved one hotel, he would focus his attention there, but asked his associate to follow her starting when I left on Monday. He also asked permission to connect our home phone and install sound-activated audio recorders in her car and house. He then asked if my wife knew about my upcoming trip, and I told him that I just found out about it this morning and had not yet had a chance to tell Ginger. In this case, he told me that he wanted immediate access to her car and house to install recording devices, and I was not to tell her until he installed them. I knew she was at work and her car would be in the bank parking lot, so we went there straight away. He installed a sound-activated recorder under the driver's seat. We then went to our house where he hooked up our phone and hid several wireless mini microphones around the house with a receiver and recording device in an unlocked shed behind our house. This way, he said, his associate could pick up the records daily while my wife was away from the house. I gave him a spare key to Ginger's car when he asked and told him that his associate would change the tapes there periodically. When he finished, he wrote down the number I found in Ginger's phone log and said he would check who it belonged to. I then went back to work after he told me he would contact me. That night after dinner, I told Ginger about my planned business trip, and she seemed sad that I was leaving again. I noticed that the heavy feeling in my chest and nausea were now with me constantly. I carried on with my life as usual, waiting for Sam to contact me. If she acted like a loving wife, I would have to act like a loving husband. That weekend, I had sex with Ginger so as not to arouse her suspicion. I put a lot of effort into our lovemaking. What was that, honey? We haven't had sex like this since before we had kids. I wanted to show you how much I love you and appreciate how much you mean to me and the kids. I really appreciate it, Jack. Sometimes I feel like I'm just taken for granted. Anytime you need a pick-me-up, honey, let me know. I appreciate everything you do to keep our marriage and our family together. Thanks, Jack, and I'll be sure to let you know after this, she laughed. I'll miss you while you're away. Keep me in your thoughts while you're away. I don't want you to cheat. Darling, I've always been faithful to you, and I'm not going to cheat. It's soothing, darling. Are you being good while I'm gone? This was the moment of truth, it seemed to me. She didn't hesitate when she answered, Yes, darling. You are the only one for me. You and the children are my only reason for living, as they say. I'm glad to hear that. We have a perfect marriage and a perfect family. We shouldn't ruin it. I agree with you 100%. Now I need to sleep. You've completely exhausted me. Good night, darling. She didn't blink in response. Perhaps I was wrong about her. The coming week could make everything clearer. I tried to sleep, but I tossed and turned all night, imagining her having sex with some guy in a hotel room. I left for the airport on Monday morning, saying goodbye to Ginger with a kiss. As usual, I instructed the children to behave and obey their mother before I left. After I pulled away from the house, I pulled over to the side of the road around the corner as I felt myself starting to hyperventilate. I took out the paper bag I had brought with me and breathed into it. After a few minutes, I was almost back to normal and continued on my way. While I was away, I had a hard time concentrating on things, but I tried to stay focused so as not to think about what Ginger might be doing in my absence. On the flight back, I was so anxious that I went to the bathroom twice with my paper bag to calm my nerves. When I arrived home on Wednesday evening, I tried to act natural, but I think she knew something was wrong. I avoided her greeting kiss by letting her kiss my cheek. Is something bothering you, Jack? Were you acting strange even before you left on Monday? It's probably stress from a new project at work, I told her, hoping to avoid further discussion of what might be troubling me. You've never let work bother you like this before. This is a special project, and I can get a big promotion because of it, I lied. Well, I'm worried about you. Do you want to take a Valium? They help me when I'm feeling stressed. Okay, I'll try half, I thought. They might be better and less noticeable than a paper bag. After taking the pill, I waited, and after a while I felt myself coming to my senses. I breathed a sigh of relief. Are you feeling better, Jack? Yes, much better. Thank you. Do you want to go up to the bedroom now? I sent the kids to my parents for the night. It was a clear invitation to sex, but I didn't think I could respond, at least until I heard from a private detective. And after that, perhaps never again. I'm really tired, honey. I'd just like to sleep. Okay, honey. She looked disappointed and worried. I didn't know if she was worried about my health or that I suspected something. Perhaps the private investigator will find nothing, and this will all pass. I woke up early the next morning, showered, and got dressed for work. I wasn't sleeping well due to nervous energy, so apparently the Valium stopped working. Before leaving home, I found my wife's bottle of pills and took some Valium with me, then took another half of the pill. I stopped at a 24-hour cafe where I ate breakfast and drank a cup of decaf coffee, then was ready to go. Around 9 o'clock, I couldn't wait any longer and, closing the door to my office, I called Sam to find out what had happened in my absence. Sam, this is Jack Masters. What can you tell me about the last few days regarding my wife? Mr. Masters, I was just about to call you. Can you come to my office this morning so I can give you a full report of what we found? I'll be there in 15 minutes. Sam, taking another half of the Valium, I told my secretary that I would be gone for about an hour and asked her to call me on my cell phone if anything urgent required my attention. When I arrived at Sam's office, his secretary waved me into his office, and I walked in with a feeling of trepidation. Sam stood up as I entered and extended his hand across the table. "I'm guessing you want to know what we found out," he said, "so let's get straight to the point. Your wife is really having an affair," he told me without preamble. "Oh God, I was afraid of this," I said, leaning back in the chair in front of his desk. "I'm afraid this is more than just an affair. She is into hardcore sex with her lover and seems to enjoy submitting to him and others sexually, and pain is her main motivator," he continued. He started posting a series of photos in front of me, and I saw my wife, completely naked, having sex with two men. I suddenly felt nauseous and rushed out of Sam's office down the hallway to the toilet, where I vomited my breakfast and more. It took me a while to come to my senses, and I took another half of the Valium before heading back to Sam's office. His secretary looked at me with sympathy when I returned. "Sorry about that," I said. He put the photos away while I was gone and put them in an envelope. "These are preliminary results until I hear from you how far you want to go next. We also have video of the entire Tuesday evening," he said, handing me an envelope. "When you decide to terminate our services, we will prepare a final report for you and a copy for your lawyer. By the way, we have discovered that her master is John Harding, a vice president at the bank where she works." I was still in shock, but the Valium was now helping me stay calm, and I could think quite clearly. "Okay, Sam, I'll let you know. I need to think a little about my options now." "I understand. We will wait for your response." I headed back to the office and had some quiet time for reflection. Returning to the office, I told my secretary that I did not want to be disturbed and locked myself in my office. I had to make a decision that would affect our marriage, my family, and our children. I sat in my office all day, not even leaving for lunch. My secretary knew something was bothering me and correctly suspected that it had to do with problems at home. She checked in on me a couple of times to see how I was doing, and my boss came down to talk when he found out I was closed for the day. "Jack, I know you're having problems, and if there's anything I can do to help, let me know. Why don't you take the rest of the day off and go home?" he suggested. "Thank you for your concern and suggestion, Jerry, but I'm better off thinking alone here," I replied. "I understand. We all wish you the best," he said as he closed the door and left. I sat there until my usual leaving time, and by then I had decided what I needed to do. I took another half of the Valium on the way home and was fairly calm when I walked into our house. Ginger met me at the door and tried to kiss me, but I avoided it. "Jack," she exclaimed, "what's happened?" "Ginger, we need to talk. I'm going to take the kids to your parents for a while, and we can talk when I get back," I said. She turned pale and looked at me with horror, but whispered, "Okay, Jack." When I returned, she was sitting in her usual chair in the living room, and I walked over and closed the curtains on the windows, turned on the light in the room, and then turned to her. "Ginger, get up and take off your clothes," I said. She looked at me in shock. "I'm sorry, what?" "You heard me. Get up and take off your clothes. Now." Oh God, oh God. "You know, please don't make me do this, Jack. Please. Do it, Ginger, or I'll come and rip your clothes off." Crying and moaning, she stood up and began to take off her clothes. She stopped when she was left in her bra and panties. I could already see the red marks of violence on her beautiful body. "That's it," I said. Tears streamed down her face as she removed her bra, revealing painful marks on her perfectly shaped breasts. Removing her panties revealed even more bite marks and lash marks on her beautiful buttocks and thighs. "Oh God, Ginger, how could you? How could you?" I cried, tears streaming down my face as I looked at her. "I'm so sorry, Jack. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. Go put your robe on and come back. We'll talk and you'll have to make some decisions," I said, trying to wipe away my tears with the sleeve of my shirt. I felt my chest begin to tighten again and seemed restless until she left the room and I took another half of the Valium. When she returned in a robe, I began to feel calmer. I waved for her to sit in the chair. I handed her an envelope with photos of her dates and said, "Look at them, bitch. This is what your family, your parents, my parents, and all our friends will see, as well as the divorce court. Look at every one of them." I really don't think she saw any of the pictures as she quickly flipped through them, her body shaking with uncontrollable sobs and her eyes filled with tears. Oh God, what have I done? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I want you to tell me about it. I don't need painful details. Just tell me how it started. Tell me if you had other relationships. Tell me if the children are mine. Tell me if you love and want to go to his master, John Harding. Oh, Jack, I've never had any other relationships, and I love you and want to stay with you and our children. The children are yours. Please don't doubt it. Don't kick me out. I need your help. I need to understand why I did it. I'm so sorry this happened. I love you and the kids so much I can't bear the thought of losing it. I felt my heart beating in my chest, mostly out of rage. It was a white-hot fireball in my stomach that Valium couldn't calm. Tell me the rest, and remember, if I find out you lied, I'll make you pay. Okay, it all started 6 months ago when I was taking a 3-week course for bank tellers. John Harding taught the course to me and 3 other women who wanted to work part-time. I was having trouble learning some of the things he taught, and he invited me to stay after school for extra lessons after the bank closed. I was so grateful for his willingness to give me extra time that I apparently began to let him control me, and I liked it. I don't know why. And then I started meeting him in the evenings while you were on a business trip. We met at a hotel near the airport, and he started making me pay for the room. I felt so embarrassed and cheap about what I was doing, and I wanted to stop. But he showed me a video of us together and what I let him do to me and said he would send it to you if I didn't do what he wanted. I'm so glad it's over. Move on with my life, but I need to understand why I did it. I really need your help, and I'm so sorry that things turned out this way. I love you and the children so much that I can't bear the thought of losing you. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, mostly from rage. It was like a white-hot fireball in my stomach that the Valium couldn't calm down. Now you have to make a decision. These are your options, and I need an answer by tomorrow morning. 1. I will divorce you and take full custody of the children. If you don't agree to full custody and limited dating rights, I will release the private investigator's report with all the photos to all our family and friends and let the world know what an easy girl you are. Then you can continue your connection with your master. 2. I will agree not to get a divorce, but you must agree to resign from the bank, testify to our lawyer about what you did, and agree to certain restrictions on your future activities. I'm giving you this option very reluctantly, but our children are still young enough to need a mother, and you are the best candidate. I will not make the private investigator's report public, but I will hold it as a guarantee of your future loyalty and respect for me. I also want you to get tested for STDs. Oh, thank you, honey, for another chance. You won't regret it. I don't want your answer now. I want it tomorrow morning, after you've thought about everything. You'll be sleeping in the guest room tonight and for an indefinite future. Okay, Jack, I understand. I hope you really understand. The next morning, I got up early after a sleepless night. When I fell asleep, I had nightmares where I was standing on a high balcony, looking into the bedroom where Ginger was hosting a series of men. I couldn't find a way to get down to stop her, and I woke up in a cold sweat. I must have screamed because Ginger knocked on the door twice, asking if everything was okay. After she left, I heard her crying as she walked down the hallway back to our guest room. I was sitting in the kitchen drinking decaf coffee before heading back upstairs to shower and get dressed for work when Ginger walked in. She was wearing an old nightgown and robes and looked like she hadn't slept much either. I just looked at her, not showing it, when she came up to me and looked into my eyes. Jack, I can't tell you how sorry I am, but I can't keep saying this for the rest of my life. I can only show you that I mean it. I want to accept your offer to stay with you as my wife. I accept any conditions which you want to establish regarding my future actions, and I will call right now and resign from the bank. You understand that you will be my wife in name only. I do not plan to have sexual relations with you, and you will live in the guest room indefinitely. As far as I am concerned, you will live as a housekeeper and guardian of our children. You will be paid a weekly salary as a housekeeper and a cash allowance for the purchase of food and other necessary things for the home. I understand, Jack. By the way, you've lost the right to call me darling or use any other term of endearment. My name is Jack, and yes, you can make me breakfast when I come down. I understand, Jack. When I arrived at work, I called Sam and asked him to stop any further action on my case and asked how long it would take to get a final report on what he had already found. He said he would finish it this afternoon since everything was already on his computer, including the photos. Immediately after finishing the work, he will send a copy to me and one to my lawyer, John Masters, by courier. For some reason I didn't know at the time, I asked him not to mention in his report the video he took of my wife during her date, but to send it to me. He agreed to do this and did not question my motives, since he already had enough photographic evidence to support the conclusions in the report. I then called John Masters and told him what Sam had found out and that a copy of the report would be in his office that evening. We agreed to meet the next day after he read it. John, I want you to look at the report, given that I would like to sue the bank and John Harding. Tomorrow, I will bring Ginger so you can listen to her story and take her testimony for whatever case we decide to pursue. Okay, Jack, I'll read the report as soon as it gets here, and I'll be ready to discuss it tomorrow when you get here. I spent the rest of the day canceling the joint credit cards, and at lunchtime I transferred accounts to another bank in my name, only from the one where Ginger worked. I also put our savings in my father's name as a trust for the children. When I got home that night, I brought my copy of the report with me, and after dinner, while the kids were busy with homework, I sat down with her in the living room and showed it to her. I didn't mention anything about the video because on the way home, I stopped at our new bank and rented a safe deposit box for him. Ginger sobbed as she leafed through it and realized how carefully it had been prepared to document her infidelity. I don't know what to say, Jack. I just want you to know what I'll have in my safe deposit box if you let me down again. I understand. I want you at John Masters' office tomorrow morning at 10, ready to testify about your affair with John Harding. You also need to find the name of a good psychiatrist and make an appointment as soon as possible. Yes, I will be there and do whatever you say. I want you to know that I called the bank today and quit. I didn't try to contact John Masters. I also found out the name of the psychiatrist today, and the earliest I can get an appointment will be next week. Fine. My heart was still clenching, and I continued to take Valium from time to time, trying to keep the situation under control. I started to feel depressed and very sad. That night I had more nightmares and decided that I might need help from a psychiatrist before this story ended. The next day I left work at 10 minutes to 10 to meet John and Ginger, who drove her car to John's office. I told my boss that I had personal issues that needed to be resolved, and he understood and said I could take the rest of the day if I needed it. When I arrived at John's office the next morning, I found Ginger in the waiting room and we walked in together. John greeted us and motioned us to the chairs in front of the table. I have read the private investigator's report And now I need to speak with Ginger to determine what kind of case we could make against the bank, John Harding, and any other individuals who may have been involved. So tell me about it, Ginger. Ginger looked at me. Are you going to sue John and the bank? I will try to destroy John Harding, and the bank should pay because it all started in their class. Ginger turned away quietly, and her shoulders shook as if she had been crying. After a few minutes, she turned back and said, I'm ready to tell you about it. Tears streamed down her face, and John handed her a box of tissues. After she dried her eyes, she began to tell John essentially the same story she had told me earlier. When she finished, John thought for a moment before speaking. I think we have a case to go to court against the bank and John Harding and any other people who may have been involved, especially if they were also employees of the bank. First, Ginger, I need your signed deposit. I'll highlight a few things you need to pay attention to, and then I'll hand you over to my secretary, and she'll transcribe your story. Then you'll sign it, and she'll verify your signature. After this, I can begin the process of filing claims against the bank, John Harding, and persons unknown. We will be seeking a judgment of about $10 million, but I must warn you, they will try to use the publicity to their advantage, but they will be just as interested in avoiding publicity as we are. We will also seek to fire John Harding and return any photographs or videos he has. After Ginger's deposition was completed, I returned to work. I thought about going home, but I didn't want to be alone with Ginger. When I thought about her, I felt rage building up inside me, and I just couldn't face it. I began to seriously consider divorce as the best solution to our problem. But our children deserve a family, and I vowed to hold on even though I knew I was entering a mental state of rage and depression. Over the next 2 months, we lived together, and although the rage subsided, I still experienced bouts of depression that left me almost incapacitated at times. I had to take time off from work. While Ginger started seeing her psychiatrist, I also started going to sessions. After another 2 months, he was able to adjust my medication therapy so that I was almost able to function normally and return to work. I knew that the children were suffering because of my condition and because of the poor relationship I had with their mother. So our life together continued, and after a year it improved to the point that Finger was again sharing a bed with me, although we had not tried to have sex for a month or more. I discovered that I became impotent when I tried to have sex, but after the doctor prescribed me the drug, we were able to have sex again. Ultimately, we were able to restore a normal marital relationship, and I was able to give up my dependence on drugs. Our family relationships began to return to normal. Meanwhile, our lawyer, John Masters, continued to prosecute the bank and John Harding. The result was an out-of-court settlement for $3 million with the bank. The bank fired John Harding and his wife filed for divorce. We got a judgment against him for $500,000, and he had to move and start a new life in another state to get a new job and pay alimony and child support. I invested the money we received from the bank and Harding mainly into a trust fund for the children and appointed John Masters as administrator. Eventually, I was able to reduce my medication for depression and anxiety, and we began going to couples counseling. Ginger learned from her psychiatrist about some of the reasons why she became involved with John Harding and learned to avoid similar situations in the future. After a few years, our marital relationship returned to the comfortable atmosphere we had known before her infidelity, although I continued to closely monitor her actions. Ginger never went to work again. As our 25th wedding anniversary approached, our oldest son, David, graduated from college, got married, and gave us a grandson, Eric. Ginger and I were thrilled to be grandparents. Sandra was a senior in college and Michael was a freshman. We were proud of our children and their achievements. A couple of weeks before our 25th anniversary, I noticed subtle changes in her behavior and actions. I couldn't believe she was involved in another affair after all these years. Our sex life was still good, I thought. I tried to please her. So why would she cheat? I started keeping a closer eye on her and started by checking her email. Although it seemed like she was trying to hide something, I discovered emails from someone named Charles thanking her for something she had done for him and begging to meet her to properly thank her. Her answers were hesitant at first, but he persisted until she finally agreed to meet him at the hotel on the Saturday night before our anniversary, which was the following Monday. He told her that he had booked room 524 at the hotel and would meet her there at 6:30 p.m. My old chest pains came back, as did my depression and rage. How and why could she be unfaithful to me again? I had already made reservations for both of us for our anniversary dinner on Monday night and was starting to think of it as a farewell dinner for our marriage. This time I decided not to hire a private detective, but to simply go and confront her and her lover at the hotel and then see what happened. On Saturday morning, she told me that she needed to go to the hospital for a couple of hours in the evening to visit a sick friend, trying to act as natural as possible. I nodded in response and went back to reading the morning newspaper. The day dragged on slowly, and I had to dig around to find my old container of Valium to keep me calm. Around 6 o'clock in the evening, Ginger left, and after an hour and a half of waiting, I followed her to the hotel. After wondering how I could get into the room she was using, I found an old baseball cap and jacket in the trunk of my car, took them with me, and went into the hotel. It was a luxury hotel, and the shop at the entrance sold fresh flowers. I bought a large bouquet and took the elevator to the 5th floor. Finding number 524, I put on my cap and jacket and, holding the flowers in front of my face, knocked on the door. I felt my heart pounding in my chest. I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. "Who's there?" my wife asked through the door. "Flower delivery, madam," I replied, trying to change my voice. I heard the door unlock, and she looked outside, saying, "I didn't order flowers. You must be." About this time, I dropped the flowers and rushed inside. "Where is he?" I demanded. "Oh, Jack, you're just in time. Nobody's here. I just made it up for you to come here. The kids are throwing us an anniversary dinner tonight, and they wanted to surprise you. Now put on the suit that is lying on the bed." I remember walking over and looking into the bathroom to make sure she was alone, and then turning around to look at her as she stood smiling at me. My brain shut down for a few seconds, and then something clicked, and I felt the rage building up inside me. What the hell did she do? She knew about the problems I had years ago after she cheated. Why did she use a situation like this to lure me here? Just as I was about to start screaming at her, everything around me started to go dark, and I felt myself falling and sliding into a deep hole. I heard Ginger scream, "Jack," before everything went dark. So the next day began, and I found myself in the intensive care unit of the local hospital. I was subjected to a series of tests in the morning, and while I waited for the results, I spoke to my son, David. Sandra and Michael were at home tending to their mother. "Dad, Mom is being sedated. She doesn't understand why you're angry with her and why you don't want to see her." "David, I am seriously considering divorcing your mother. That's why I want to talk to John Masters." "Why, Dad? Why? What did she do to make you want to do this?" "Do you know how your mother made me come to the hotel?" "No, she just said she'd get there." "Before I start the story, can you tell me how your mother found out about the anniversary dinner plans?" "She found out when Michael accidentally left a folder with our hotel proposals and other materials that made it pretty clear what we were planning. So we decided to surprise you anyway. She said that she would take it upon herself to get you to the banquet hall by 7 o'clock in the evening. So we left that part to her. This all started when you were 12 years old. You didn't know it then, but I discovered that your mother was having a very nasty affair. After that, I almost completely broke down and was out of work and in therapy for several months. I'm grateful that the company I worked for kept me employed until I could get back on the job. I never really forgave your mother for that, but over time we became quite comfortable living together again. I had almost uncontrollable fits of rage against your mother, and at times I despaired of repairing our relationship, and it took a long time to get over it. To get me to come here, your mother decided to invent a new lover, whom she was supposed to meet at the hotel on Saturday evening. I believed it, and when I went to the hotel room to confront her and her lover, all my old psychological problems, and now possibly heart problems, resurfaced. I'm so angry at her that if I hadn't been sedated, I might have died or killed her. I can only assume that your mother, being a normal, rational person, must have known what would happen and perhaps hoped that I would have a heart attack and she would be left with all our property and no one would know about her betrayal. Oh my God, Dad, we never knew about this. I remember when I was a child, you were sick for a long time. I didn't know until now what the problem was. It's hard to believe that she could do what you suggest, but I don't understand how she could ignore your previous problems. Well, if I file for divorce, I plan to make the whole story public, but I will give your mother a chance to explain to me in a few days why she tried to lure me into a hotel room like that. There were other options she could have used to achieve the same goal. Dad, I hope it doesn't come to a divorce. I hope you think about it rationally. I think it will depend on how rational a story your mother tells me. Later that day, the cardiologist came into the emergency room. My son, Michael, was with me. Mr. Antis Carter, I have good news. Your heart is fine, and we can move you to a regular ward for the night, and you can go home tomorrow. It seems like you had some kind of shock that caused you to faint. It appears from your records that you have a history of mental stress, and you should probably see a psychiatrist to determine the cause of your problem. If you continue to be as stressed as you are now, you may develop heart problems. Thank you, doctor. Coming home is a mixed blessing in my case because the source of my problem is also at home. Well, you'll have to work it out, perhaps through couples counseling. I have already walked this path. It didn't work. Okay, but in my professional opinion, you are physically ready to leave the hospital. You need to find a way to avoid repeating what caused your problem. Thank you for your help, doctor. After the doctor left, I turned to Michael and asked, "Do you know if David has contacted John Masters?" "Oh, I forgot to tell you, Dad. Mr. Masters will see you as soon as you can. I'll call John now and see if I can meet him tomorrow morning after I leave the hospital," I said, reaching for the phone. I managed to arrange a meeting with John at 10 o'clock the next morning. Then a nurse came and began preparing me to be transferred from the intensive care unit. After being discharged the next morning, David drove me to John Masters' office where we had a meeting with him. "I heard you're having old problems again, Jack," he said after we greeted him. "Yes, and now I have to do something about it. I thought I had closed that early episode, but she did something that brought it all back, and I'm not sure, but she did it intentionally." I then told him what happened and caused my problems. "What do you want to do, Jack?" "I want you to begin divorce proceedings on charges of infidelity. Treason. Do you have any new evidence that she is having another affair?" "No, I want to start the process based on the betrayal that happened 13 years ago." "I'm not sure the judge will agree with this, Jack. You lived with Ginger for 13 years in what he would probably assume was a harmonious marriage. He will likely deny the divorce petition due to the lack of current evidence to the contrary." "I don't care. I want to make this part of the public record of her infidelity and expose the sordid details of her affair. If this is rejected, we can try to get a divorce on other grounds, but I want to hurt her. She got away with her affair when I caught her 13 years ago because I believed children needed a mother and a family, and I didn't want to go public with the details of her affair because of the impact it might have on the family. The only pain she experienced was short-lived, but I suffered for years before I could return to a normal life. Now she has it all back, and I want to hurt her for what she did and for her cheating. The children are now old enough that custody is no longer an issue, and they are old enough that they are not traumatized by the details of her affair. This could be expensive. Jack, are you sure you want to continue in this direction?" "I'm absolutely sure, but I'm going home now to confront Ginger, and unless she has a good explanation for her latest actions, I'm going to want to continue." I don't know what she can say that would justify her actions, but I'll listen to her. If you don't hear from me, please continue with the divorce process based on her previous infidelity. Okay, Jack, I will follow your instructions. Thanks, John. We left John's office and went home to meet Ginger. When we arrived home, Sandra and Michael met us outside, and we all entered the house together. Ginger was sitting in the living room, waiting for us. She looked exhausted, and I was glad to see that she was finally in pain. I beckoned the children to sit down as I addressed her, without coming close. "Hey, Ginger," I said, sitting down in the chair opposite her. I tried to remain calm and unemotional. "Hi, Jack," she replied with tears running down her cheeks, and continued. "David told me why you are angry with me and what you want to hear from me. It's a pity that I don't have a rational reason for what I did. I should have known better, but I didn't. I can only ask you to forgive me for not exercising better judgment in my actions. I just didn't foresee the consequences of my actions. Ginger, your joke could have killed me, and I can't help but think it was done for that purpose." "Oh no, Jack, please don't say or think that way. I love you and couldn't wait for us to grow old together. Why should I kill you? You have a strange way of showing love to someone. I see your motives in what you did as a way to keep the details of your previous infidelity a secret forever. If I were gone, and you could then manage our joint assets, you could then follow your perverted sexual desires without remorse. Oh no, Jack, please don't blame me for this. Not in front of children. I have no inclination to have kinky sex again, and I don't need extra money. I really hope the report of my infidelity never becomes public knowledge, but I would never try to kill you to keep it a secret." "Oh no, Jack. Please don't blame me for this. Not in front of children. I have no intention of getting involved in kinky sex again, and I don't need extra money. I really hope the report of my infidelity never becomes public knowledge, but I would never try to kill you to keep it a secret. The children are old enough to know about our problems so they can avoid our mistakes in the future. The thing is, I can't go on living my life constantly worrying about the possibility of you cheating again, and I keep thinking about how I, as the injured party in all of this, have suffered the most pain because of your actions. Maybe I look like I'm doing this for revenge, and maybe that's what I need to get closure on this matter. But you so thoughtlessly forgot about the hardships I went through after you cheated on me, and the months and years of therapy it took me to deal with, that it just boggles my mind that you could do what you did. That's why I believe you planned this on purpose. You have not convinced me that this was an accident, and therefore I am instructing John Masters to begin the process of divorce on the grounds of infidelity. I would recommend that you hire a lawyer." "Treason. Jack, I haven't been with anyone except during my infidelity. I swore that I would be faithful to you, and I kept my word. I'm going to base my divorce suit on your infidelity 13 years ago." "Oh, please, Jack, do not do that. I will give you a divorce on any other terms, but don't do it based on what I did 13 years ago. It would kill me if this report became public. I'm sorry, Ginger, but it will be better this way. I want you to really feel the pain. Contact your lawyer and have him contact John Masters. I'm going to pack a few things and move into a motel until I find an apartment. Then I'll come back for the rest of my things. Do you guys want to say anything about this?" I asked, looking at each of the children. "I'd like to say something that I think will sum up how we feel," David said. "Dad, I'm afraid you're being too vindictive, basing the divorce on an event that happened 13 years ago. And Mom, I don't understand how you could accidentally do something so stupid. That being said, we are all sorry this even happened. I will regret trying to throw you an anniversary surprise for the rest of my life. It saddens me to think that I or any of us may have contributed to your separation. Maybe when the dust settles, you can both find a way to be together again." "David," I said, "what you tried to do was commendable and appropriate for the occasion. Please, guys, don't blame yourself for this. This could have happened at any other time. Now I'll go upstairs to pack my things." As I walked up the stairs, Ginger sat quietly, crying, while our children tried to comfort her. Later, I drove my car to a motel near work, where I hoped to stay for a week before finding a more permanent place to live. The confrontation ended, and things began to approach the end of 25 years of unsuccessful marriage. In the days following my encounter with Ginger, I found a furnished apartment close to work and moved in immediately. I then returned to our old house to pick up the remaining personal clothing and other items and move them into the apartment. Ginger sat in the kitchen while I was there, and we didn't talk to each other. She just sat there, looking tired and exhausted. A week after I moved in, John filed a divorce petition with the court, and a hearing date was set. A legal notice was inserted in the local newspaper, and I heard that many of our friends, unaware of our breakup, were calling home asking Ginger what was going on. The children said she spent a lot of time crying and began avoiding answering calls. To some extent, I felt satisfaction that she began to feel pain. At the divorce hearing, the judge, as John had warned, denied my petition for divorce on the grounds of infidelity. Ginger's lawyer also got the court to rule that the private investigator's report should not be made public because it was about infidelity. I was glad that I had foreseen this possibility many years ago. The next week, I took the old videotape out of the safe and took it to the guy they recommended to me. I asked him to prepare a video that could be uploaded to the website. We worked together for most of the day, selecting short clips from the tape and inserting them into a composite video. The men's faces were blurred, but Ginger's face was easily recognizable. Finally, we titled it "Ginger Enjoys Kinky Sex" and included the city where we lived. We then uploaded it to a popular amateur adult site. I thought that within a few days the rumors would spread and it would become common knowledge among the people who knew us. In fact, a week later I had my first indication that the video had been discovered by locals and the lead actress had been identified. A neighbor at work called me and asked if I had seen the website. His friend warned him about this. I pretended to write down information about the site and thanked him for the warning. After that, I received a few more phone calls, and I knew that Ginger would soon find out about it. She called me from work, and she was hysterical. "Jack, what have you done? Jack, you scoundrel. Did you really have to do that?" I hung up without answering and felt a strange sense of satisfaction. She finally felt pain. Our children also found out about it, and I received calls from them. This was the part I wish I could avoid. They didn't need to see their mother like this. "Dad, this is David. I'm really angry at you. Why did you have to put this on a website? We don't want to have you as a father anymore." "I'm sorry, David. Please give my apologies to Sandra and Michael too. This had to be done. I hope we can get back together someday because I really didn't want to hurt you. But I didn't see any other option. Please don't contact us again. Goodbye." That was the last I heard from my children for almost 2 years. It really hurts. I heard from friends that Ginger had suffered a nervous breakdown, and I felt some remorse, but I steeled myself and threw myself into my work. She was inundated with calls and offers from travelers from all over the state and country, as well as from abroad, and it was too much for her. We filed for divorce due to irreconcilable differences. She didn't dispute it at all. The judge wanted to hold me in contempt for publishing the video, but John explained that the court's previous decision to suppress the private investigator's report did not mention the video. Because the video was not mentioned in the report, it was not part of the court order. The judge had to agree. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized, and I felt empty inside. I ordered the video removed from the website and allowed time to be the healer it needed to bring closure to this episode in my life. I continued to support Sandra and Michael through college, even though they never tried to contact me. Ginger received the house as part of her divorce and immediately sold it, moving into a condominium. I heard that she rarely went outside and became almost a recluse. She did not date in her new freedom and hardly saw her old friends. Her parents and our children were her only real connections to the outside world. For me, it was closure to a bad episode in my life, and although I missed the companionship of marriage, I felt content. I often wondered if I had gone too far in hurting her. End.